Hello guys, and welcome to the first episode of the Middlegame Madness series. Here is the galaxy's favorite FIDA master. Now I'm just kidding, but I'm not kidding when I say this game is going to be one of the craziest things you have ever seen. So, where the name Middlegame Madness come from? Actually, I consider myself a creative, hyperactive, positional, and unorthodox player, so I thought this name would perfectly match to the topics that have influenced my development and that I would like to share with you. So for each topic, I try to choose games from my own collection or ones I have a personal connection with. So this way, I'm almost certain that you have never seen these games before. So the first topic of the Middlegame Madness will be the intuitive sacrifice. But what does it mean? Well, to explain that, I'm going to refer to my own material. And yes, I'm literally going to read my own notes here, so don't judge me please, even the FIDA masters need to stick to the script sometimes. So let me read it up for you, what I wrote it up here. The intuitive sacrifice is a move where a player gives up a piece without being able to calculate the full range of the variations. Unlike tactical sacrifices, which rely on the precise and the concrete calculation, intuitive sacrifices are more from a player's strategic insight or deep sense of the position. These sacrifices are often made when the player feels that the resulting position will offer a long-term compensation or dynamic chances, even if the exact path to success isn't entirely clear. So what are the common objectives of the intuitive sacrifice, which include exposing the opponent's king, or gaining strategic advantages, or disrupting the opponent's harmony. The intuitive sacrifices require boldness and confidence, as their success is really guaranteed. These moves can leave opponents disoriented, struggling to navigate the complexities they introduce. One of the greatest proponents of this intuitive sacrifices was Mikhail Tal, of course. Tal often sacrifices material on his intuition to overwhelm his opponents. So let me show you a game which is a really good example for this intuitive sacrifice topic. And this game was played from my father from the white side. His name is Istvanovszki Kálmán, FIDA master, and his opponent was Vadász László, grandmaster, and actually he was kind of famous at this time because he was an Olympiad champion. He was a golden medal winner at that time, so he was an extremely strong opponent. And actually this game happened in 1992, where I have been born, so this must be a sign, of course. So let's have a look on this position and start the calculation with me. So if I evaluate the position, I would say that Black's position is a bit more comfortable since he has more space to play. He has a really strong pawn in the center, which is well defended. Probably the a4 pawn of white is a bit hanging, so it could be a weakness in the long run. So probably black is better. In this case, if white continues the game in a normal way, we can say, then probably in the long run, white is going to lose the game. So what can white does in a situation like that? He has to find some dynamic plan. He has to find some counterplay chances. So that means he can take some risk also, of course, because otherwise, as I said, probably he is going to lose the game. But what about black? Black in this position took the a4 pawn immediately, which is not a proper blunder, but it was a mistake. Probably a simple king h7 would be much better. It's a prophylactic move, getting ahead of every problem. So the prophylactic move is something like preventing the opponent's plan before it even can happen. And after king h7, black prevents white's plan, and after that he can continue his own plan, like continue the attack against the a4 pawn. And he went out from the check, what we will see in the next move. But instead of that, black took the pawn on a4 immediately, and if he doesn't do that, then in this case this game wouldn't happen. So what now? White played, I think you already guessed, white played knight h5 check. And it's a very typical example of the intuitive sacrifice. It's very shocking actually, because even the engines needs a few minutes to understand this move. And for a while they say that this move is losing for white, and after that, after a few minutes, they change. So it's extremely amazing if you ask me. And why is it an intuitive sacrifice? Because we cannot calculate the full range of the variations here, but white, as I mentioned before, white has to do something. He has to grab the practical chances and see what happens. So, okay, let's start the full calculation after this move. What can black does? I'm not going to talk about the king g8 right now, because it's going to be the same as king h7, which happened in the game. So it's not a difference, not a big difference. King h8 would be the best continuation for black, which keeps the advantage for him. But let's have a look why the grandmaster didn't go to h8, why he decided to go to h7 instead. To be honest, it's also very interesting that for the human eye, king h7 is more practical, since if you play king h8, then maybe one time if white can play h4 somehow, not here of course, but one time, then if he can does something with the g5 pawn, then the h6 will be unprotected. So we cannot blame black's move here with king h7, because probably he just wanted to leave the king closer to the h7 pawn to give it some protection. So I think it's very logical, but if you ask the engine, it's already lost. So just a little difference between one king move, and one keeps the advantage and the other one lose. And that's why I always say that it's not necessary for an intuitive sacrifice to be sound, because you know, it's not the engines who play the game, the humans play the game, and with the human eye, probably king h7 was more practical, and he decided to go for that, which was losing. But of course, let's start with black most natural move, with taking the knight on h5. Probably this is the biggest question. What happens now? f6 check. Black has to take the pawn, of course, otherwise the e7 is going to hanging. Rook f5. And now black has only two serious moves. Let's start with the queen c7, and the other one is queen d6. Let's start with the queen c7. Now you can already guess what happens here. Of course, rook g5 check. And now what? Now we can also calculate the moves of the king h8, king h7, king f8, or taking the rook with the pawn. Let's start with king h8. Rook f1. Now the crazy stuff starts right away. The f6 is hanging, so if black, for example, protects the f6 with the queen, with queen d6, then seatbelts on, but rook g7 is just winning, because the rook is untouchable there, since the knight f5 will arrive with a fork, and now the h6 is also hanging. If the knight goes away, we can also play knight f5, so it's just crazy, but the game is totally over, actually. And of course, the h6 is also hanging for a checkmate, of course. So if we go back until here, black has to take the rook, and in this case, rook f6, and yes, the crazy things continues because here I would say that white will give a checkmate really soon, but the engine says the position is a draw in every variation. Don't ask me how. It's like this is the intuitive sacrifice is all about. That we have a position which is a draw actually set by the computer, but I wouldn't bet to a draw if some people play this position. So let's get back until here. If black decided to go to king h7, then rook g7 once again. Now, of course, the king h8 is losing since queen h6 is a checkmate, so he has to take the rook. Knight f5 check. King g6 is going to be a checkmate very soon. It's a check, check, and checkmate on f4, so it's not possible. We go back until here, king g8 is the only move, queen h6, now the g7 checkmate is hanging, so actually queen c5 check is the only move by black, and now there is a very smart move with white. Of course, king h2 or king h1 is losing since we lose the knight on f5, but rook e3 is extremely strong, and now the f5 is just untouchable because rook g3 is going to lead to a checkmate, and yes, you can guess, but the computer also says the position is 0-0-0 here, which is just unbelievable, but that's true. So it's like that. This is the intuitive sacrifice. We cannot calculate variations like that. It's not for human beings. Okay, so we go back until here, until the rook g5. Black can also play king f8. Rook c5. Now the queen is hanging, the h6 is hanging. Knight c5, queen h6. King e8 is losing because there is going to be a check on b5, which is very uncomfortable for black. And now the queen h8, for example, is going to be a checkmate really soon. So king h8 is the only move, and probably there is nothing better for white than giving repetition and accept in the draw. So we get back until here, and let's see, of course, the most natural move here. What happens if black accepts the rook sacrifice? Queen g5 check. King h7 is losing because knight f5. Now there is a checkmate on g7, and also h6 is very uncomfortable. So knight e8 is a only move, and rook f1, and rook f4, rook h4 checkmate is unstoppable. Doesn't matter if our c4 bishop is hanging, because the checkmate is much stronger, of course, and we win the game. And if white takes, and now king f8. In this case, we can play queen h6, which is also going to be a draw because of the repetition after king g8. It's another check. You can ask that why doesn't white take the knight here, because queen e5 is just too strong, and probably black wins the game here. So white has to accept the draw. So yes, that was all about the queen c7. Let's go to the queen d6. What happens here? Rook f1. Now the f6 is hanging. Black has to do something with that, and he has many solutions, like knight d5, knight d7, knight e8, knight g8, knight h7, and the surprise I will leave to the end. Knight d5 probably is the simplest one. It's just loses immediately because rook d5, bishop d5, and knight f5. It's a fork and the game is over. Let's go to the knight d7, rook g5. Of course, taking the g5 is not possible because knight f5. King f8 is an only move. And our well-known friend strikes once again rook g7, of course. And it's untouchable because knight f5 is hanging, and also after that we will play knight f5 or rook f7 or bishop f7. There are countless threats in black's position and the game is over. So what about knight e8? I think it's a bit more complicated here, but you can guess it's just not very easy to find for black. Rook g5. King f8 doesn't work here because we can just go back and f7 is hanging. It's not possible to protect, and also the h6 is very critical. So black has to take the offer. Queen g5. You can ask why not knight f5, because in this case king f8, knight d6, bishop d6, and if you ask me, black is fine here. If we cannot give a checkmate, I'm pretty sure we cannot, then black will be okay because the pieces are extremely strong and extremely active. So yes, after taking the g5, we have to take it with the queen, king f8, queen h5. This is the only move. Every other move loses in this position, but this move wins the game. Knight f6, check, king e8, and rook f6, and probably the checkmate will come very soon after bishop b5 check and queen h8. So we still have the knight g8 move. In this case, we're not taking the g5, we take the f7. But we can also think about the rook g5, but in this case, it's going to be very similar. There is a fork, and we don't have too much here. Black is better for the same reason like we saw before. We can also try bishop f7, but black takes the b2, we take the g8, king's g8 and queen f2, and don't ask me anything. It's like just I cannot evaluate this position. It's extremely difficult. But we can also take the pawn with the rook. King h8 of course is losing because knight f5. I think it's pretty clear. So black has to take the rook. It's a check, king h8, and we take the bishop on b7, and it's a very complicated position. It's close to even according to the engines, but because of the weakness of the opponent's king, of the black's king, I think I would prefer to play this position with white, I'm pretty sure. So what we have here, the knight h7 is also here. We give a check, we give another check, king h8, and rook b7, and it's very similar to the position like we saw before. So that is my surprise to the end. I guess you already have some headache after this so much calculation, but now the seatbelt has to be on, because black can include knight b2, white has to play bishop b3, and we can start everything once again here. It's just crazy. We have to calculate the knight e8 again, the knight g8 again, the knight h7 again, everything again, and we have to answer the question that is the knight b2 changes anything or it doesn't? And that's going to be the question. So this is the intuitive sacrifice all about. It's not possible for a human being to calculate everything precisely like that, because it even takes hours, even for the engines, to understand these positions. And just imagine yourself to find yourself in a position like that in a time trouble, for example. It's just crazy. So let's see what happened in the game, because we will see some more surprises. So Black didn't accept the knight on h5, so he went to king h7, which is unfortunately losing. Knight f3. Of course, it's not it's untouchable, because in this case we give a check on f6, and after that we take the queen or we take the e7 rook, and we have material advantage. What else we have? Black played queen d6, rook d1 with a tempi, knight d5, and yes, rook sacrifice once again on d5. Now white removes black's most important piece and causing black's position to collapse. Taking the f3 is not possible. Queen d4 is winning, but probably more simple to take the queen. If black takes the queen, we take the rook, and if I calculate right, we have an extra rook, which has to be enough. So after rook d5, black played bishop d5, knight g5, because why not? We already sacrificed all of our board, so one more knight doesn't change anything. If black takes the knight, then queen g5, and there are too many threats, and the checkmate is unstoppable. Knight f6 or queen g7, something will happen. So black played king h8 in this case. Knight e6. White closing the 6th rank, and the h6 is hanging. And now it's one more intuitive sacrifice in the intuitive sacrifice, because black decided to take it with the rook, but he can also take it with the pawn. In this case, we can give a check on h6. King g8 loses, because check, check, checkmate, it's clear, but rook h7 is not that clear. Check, rook f4, important, one more piece launches to the attack. E taking the f5 is an only move, because the rook g4 is a real threat. Bishop d5, queen d5, check, rook f5, rook g8, check, rook g7, and knight f4, and white is going to deliver a checkmate really soon. So it's another 10 moves to calculate once again. It's just not possible, or not for us, I guess. Maybe Magnus could do that, but not too many people can see these lines. In the game, the Grandmaster took the e6 with the rook, f takes the rook, queen c5, knight c5, and e7, and the smoke has cleared, and white retains the material advantage and wins the game. So yeah, that was the first topic of the series, and leave me a comment please, how did you like it, and also what kind of topic you would like to see in the next episodes. And thanks for watching, take care, have a good one.